Hello everyone, welcome back. It's been a very long time. I recently played a very nice chess open tournament here in Japan, and so I thought I would do a bit of analysis and share that with all of you online as well. The tournament was called the Kyoto Gion Open. It's the third time that we've had this tournament here in Japan. It's the first time I got to attend, so I was very excited. It's FIDE rated, which is something that I also don't have a lot of opportunity to play here in Japan. And given that it's in Kyoto, not only is it very close to Osaka where I stay, but the venue and just being around the area, walking, through some temples or some beautiful autumn leaves in between games to de-stress was just absolutely fantastic. We had 23 boards, so about 46 players were competing. Most of us were from the Japanese Federation, but we had a few international players as well. And my final boss in the round 6 was actually international CM from France, who some of you may know if you speak French actually. So do check that out as well. Anyway, back to round 1 then. So in round 1 I faced a young lady from Taiwan. She was one of the international competitors in this tournament, Wang. And as you can see at the top right, as we know in chess, anyone who is under 20 is usually underrated, and this game definitely did not shake my belief in that. So I'm the clear favorite here based on ELO, but my FIDE rating is also not that solid yet, so we'll see if I'm able to really pull out that kind of result. So I was white, and so I've orientated the board this way. I open up with d4, which is my standard as well. Let me just get the board up here. So d4, and she wasn't someone I could prepare for. I didn't really know the pairings beforehand, so for most of my games, honestly, I just went in to enjoy, so we're not trying too hard to out-prep our opponents. She went d5, very standard. I went up for a queen's gambit to see if she maybe accepts or not, and she declined with the Slav, so c6. Very stable. Already here I can imagine that the game is going to be not too lively at the start. We're both probably going to develop all our pieces first. The reason is that the Slav is quite stable, and so unless she pulls out her bishop early on to one of these squares, I don't have a real quick way to put on the pressure. So I just develop my knight, she does the same, and because I'm still hoping that bishop comes out, I play knight c3 as well. This is still mainline theory. This is called the Slav Defense 3 knights variation, but honestly what I'm going through is actually a Catalan, and we'll see that in a second. So here she plays e6. She closes up with her diamond structure. This is still technically now, because of the move order, I'm going to be the Slav very soon, but this structure is called the Semi-Slav, and the Semi-Slav is just absolutely solid for black. This and the King's Indian Defense are definitely just some of the strongest and most stable ways for black to respond to white. So now that she's closed up, I go g3. I'm looking to put my bishop on the g2 square, and then maybe I'm going to try and open up this diagonal eventually. Just do a Catalan, even though she's now move ordered straight from a Slav into a Semi-Slav. And at this point she took my pawn. So this pawn that I, if you remember, gambited on move 2, she now takes it. And this is a clear pawn sacrifice the way I played it. I could play a5 here maybe, a4 to try and block off her b pawn from defending. I could immediately try and go after the pawn with knight e5, although actually in this case it doesn't work because my bishop isn't available to open up on the diagonal just yet. And so I'm not trying to complicate things just yet. I just develop my bishop, and she brings out her knight. And now she's also trying to look at b5 to keep the pawn and make me prove that I can take it back and the compensation isn't real. So I castle, and this is really the standard Catalan setup. I've got my light square bishop fianchettoed. I've pushed both my d and my c pawn, and I either have these pawns or, as in this case, maybe already black has taken it. What I'll be looking at now is obviously also to play e4 at some point, maybe to try and get a lot of control here at the middle of the board. But she immediately plays b5, and I start to wonder if I should be trying to take the middle of the board or trying to attack her queenside majority immediately with 8-4 and b3. In this case, you just try and break the pawn structure apart, because you can see now that black has opened up this light square bishop for me already. I did take a little bit of a a moment here and looked out the window and forgot what was exactly on the board, and I immediately played knight e5. And this is not completely wrong. This is not completely out of Masters database or Leech's top database, but I did not actually intend for this move to lead to what it does, because what now is a possibility for black is that she can take, I have to take back, and she has the choice to trade queens, which is probably the top move in this position for black. And if that happens, then I'm down a pawn, and I have even less ways to try and prove the compensation isn't there for black, because I would need my queen to really mount some good structure. This is by no means losing, of course, but I would prefer the queens to stay on the board. Thankfully for me, she thought the same way, and she just played knight d5 immediately. This is considered a slight inaccuracy, but at least the queens are still on the board. Now, given that I've traded off one pair of minor pieces by accident, my intention is not to trade off the second one, and I drop my knight into e4. This also looks at the d6 square here, which can give a check, which can hit some of these a little bit more vulnerable squares around black's camp, because they currently have the semi-Slav structure, so their light square bishop does not have so many places to go. And there's also a little bit of a trick there if she takes my knight after I jump it there. She develops a bishop. She's also just looking to castle probably and secure her king before continuing, and I go ahead and drop the knight straight in. So the reason for this is that I'm looking for a bit of a trick. Maybe not the best way to play. Definitely if you look for tricks, you often end up tricking yourself. But I could see that this would not be the worst move, and there are some ways I could build a bit of an advantage here. She does take my knight. Obviously her other options potentially were just to move her king over and eventually maybe castle by hand and bring her rook out another way. But she decides just to take the knight, and this is not too bad for me. There is a way for black to go wrong here. If she takes the pawn immediately, I can play e4, and her knight is actually stuck to my queen, so I would win back the piece, and then we would just continue on. However, she doesn't take back the pawn. She probably sees this trick that I have, and she decides to castle. And so now I have a backup plan. I'm not getting this trick in, but what I could do is I could still play e4, push her knight away to whichever square she believes is the most convenient for her, and then I can play e5. So what I've done now is I'm slowly starting to open up the right side of the board for myself. My two pawns are giving me a clear clamp on the middle of the board, although she can still try and push her c-pawn later as she did. But for the meantime, I'll have quite a bit of activity on her king side, and she's got very few no minor pieces and very few defenders of the king. So this looks like it might be giving me a few chances. So she develops her bishop. Quite likely she's just looking to trade the bishop off. In the long run, if we trade absolutely everything off, black's up a pawn, it's probably good for them. So I'm trying to keep in mind that I don't want to trade off too many pieces. I bring up my queen. Here's now a nice little easy trick again as well. A bit of pressure. If she doesn't move her rook, move her king, move one of the pawns, I have the chance to maybe take an exchange because I threaten mate. She does see this though. She moves her king out of the way, and instead I decide just to pressure her queen and to bring my bishop into the fight on the king side as well. She pushes up, and here I think I start to go wrong slightly. At this point, white is up a bit of an advantage. This additional pawn, the queen's gambit pawn I gave away, does not give black any immediate advantage in the game because there's nothing happening on this side of the board around these pawns, right? And for her to try and break through, to make a pass pawn, to make a clear advantage there is quite slow. Therefore, I still have a chance here, even though I've given my pawn away, even though I've accidentally thrown a knight into a mix I didn't mean to at the start. So what I should do probably at this point is to play one of my rooks across so I can start bringing them up into the game, defending there, potentially lifting one over. Also, what I can consider is maybe just immediately trying to push some pawns. This is slightly more dangerous, but the complications could be good for me if I, for instance, wanted to try push h or f4 and just immediately try and make some breakthrough here on the king side. I did decide, however, to put my bishop straight into e7. My thinking here was that I was trying to get this rook to get off of the f7 square. I want to make that pawn weak so I can try and make a break here around the king and potentially find a way to end up either mating or create a clear advantage for myself. This is not the engine's favorite move, but I did decide to go ahead to do it. She moves her rook, and now also I'm wondering, will she sack her rook for an additional pawn and my bishop? And if she does, is that good for me or am I in trouble? So probably at this point again, I maybe should have started to look at bringing a rook over, starting to bring my bishop in potentially, or push with the other pawns. But I decided to just defend my bishop one more time. And my thinking here was this also allows my bishop to come with an immediate threat of mate, which will mean that in my next move I'll be able to create another threat and black has to respond and I keep on pushing my initiative. However, black found a really nice response here and she plays c5 immediately. And so now, if you remember, I just said I'm trying not to trade off too many minor pieces, and my light square bishop is actually one of the pieces I definitely want to keep because this is one of the pieces I'm trying to use to break into the king with. And she's forcing me to either move it or trade it immediately. So the engine goes ahead and just trades it and says, white's doing fine, no worries. This is still a very even game. However, me, in my thinking, I did not like the idea of trading my light square bishop. I did see that I could eventually play f3 if I needed to defend against her queen potentially coming in, which did happen in the game. And so I went ahead and played bishop h3. I did not trade. This is not the best move, and now I've lost my initiative and my advantage, unfortunately. It's not clear losing yet, but it's no longer pressure and a good situation for me. She does come in with the expected mate threat down the side. I play f3, and from here she starts to bring her knight back. I'm not sure if she wants to bring it here or here, but there's an obvious threat of just trying to take my e-pawn. And so here we end up going into a fairly kind of expected round of moves. If she did not play her knight over, if she, I don't know, for some reason decided she wants to start pushing her pawns, or maybe even just bringing her queen in, I was even considering trying to force my situation by pushing the queen in here. I could see that, let's just say okay, well here she would be able to try and trade my queen, so I wouldn't want that, but if for any reason she did some other move, maybe she brings her rook over, maybe she pushes a pawn, I could take and I could try and force a repetition here, which is very easy, or I can still try and break through. So this secures my at least half point, although I would obviously prefer to win. But that option never came past. As after this, in my f3, she immediately played her knight back. She's putting pressure on my e5 pawn. I can see her queen's coming in. She's got a check on d4. My b2 pawn is also weak, although at this point I would throw all my pawns into the mix if it gives me an attack, because I'm clearly the one trying to make some attack happen here. I bring one of my rooks over. This is the one that currently is not doing anything. I'm expecting I could maybe try and swing it over this way. She does move her queen forward. She's now double pressuring that pawn as well as threatening this fork here on d4, which would trade queens, which potentially breaks my structure, which fixes her c-pawn structure, creates a passed pawn. It's very bad for me, definitely not something I want to happen. And so at this point I decided I would maybe just move my queen out of the way, pressuring this f-pawn, the one that I previously had tried to create some weakness on, and also avoiding the check that's coming. She does check. I move my king. Oh, I did not move my king out of the way, sorry. The reason I do not move my king out of the way is because I'm trying to avoid my king sitting on this light square diagonal. If at any point I do, there's a chance that because this pawn is pinned, I could get in all kinds of little surprise problems for myself. And I also don't want to block my light square bishop just in case I want to bring it back. So I lift my rook. It's still safe. There's no specific problem here. I also have the option of lifting my other rook over or doing something similar. And here black starts to push her own advantage and she plays c3. I could try and leave this and go immediately for the pawn, but this is in fact just just the drawn game as well. So the more principled way to go is to first take the pawn and from there to consider what to do. So what I did here was, because my rook is under attack, I lifted my rooks so I could defend my a pawn and I could start to, again, pull out either a potential perpetual by checking or like pushing her queen around, or potentially creating some pressure eventually where I could even try and win one of her pawns that she's got on these files. So I bring my king up, my rook up, she goes back to d4, and here's my chance to take that pawn. And now, if I take this pawn, which is the one that I clearly should be trying to take, my worry is that this falls with the knight, which attacks both my queen and my f3 pawn, which is also attacked by the bishop, but the engine just says, why do we care? Sacks the rook, and then from there you just start pushing straight in, and you actually get back the rook because black has to try and sack it for the queen that you can make. This is just an example. I know what could happen, but you can see that actually black is doing quite well. Sorry, white is actually doing quite well. Currently in this situation, I am up a minor piece for some pawns. The rook on that side is very defensive, and as long as I can make a plan with my king to be safe, I'm actually in great shape. Unfortunately for me, after this check, I did not take, because this knight jump made me very uncomfortable, and I was not sure that a rook sack was called for just yet. So I passed up the opportunity and I played f4. And so my chance is now passed to make a clear, easy attack because she plays king g8 and the pawn is now defended. And we're back to the engine just saying, it's all draws, let's just go home. I decide to see if I can make her move her queen to an inexperienced position, somewhere that's not so good, maybe letting me get some pressure on these files that I explained earlier. Unfortunately, she just goes straight down, and now my option might become something like this, and repetition, and we all go home and call it a day. I'm not so excited for that though, and so I'm starting to look if there's some other options of something I could do. Unfortunately, at this point, my blunder comes. So what I'm trying to do now is make a way to build up defenses of all of these squares to force her queen to go to the queen side. To do that, I need to have my bishop also with my queen on this diagonal, so that if I move my f rook and the queen lands on f3, I can take it and it's not a queen trade. So this was my thinking when I then played bishop g4. Unfortunately, this is a massive mistake. And it's a massive mistake because of this light square bishop that is covering the diagonal, which is now open because I moved my f-pawn. After she plays queen e1, my king can't go anywhere, which means I have to use a rook to defend, which means the other rook is no longer connected, and it falls. And so now I'm in a very, very bad position. I don't think there's any clear draw here anymore, and I'm down a pawn anyway. I have an advanced pawn that's passed and defended, but there's no clear way for me to break it out of its position because I had to let black take with that knight, and I had to sack my rook to open up that d7 square to move the pawn forward, which unfortunately I did not see. And so here I'm starting to make some plans. What can I do to either force a repetition or force some other way to maybe put some pressure on the king and find another way in. Maybe I can break through by sacking a bishop for one of those e or f pawns. I'm just trying to make some plans. Time-wise, we're not doing too badly, but we're going, maybe we're down to about 20 minutes, 10, maybe she was 10 minutes at this point. So I'm also trying not to take too long because I'm hoping I can get the game moving and put some pressure on her. However, I actually just blundered mate in one because this is it. And then the game's over. Black didn't see this and neither did I, but clearly I am not focusing properly. To hang mate in one is just unacceptable. So thankfully black didn't see it. I'm not sure what black was looking at, but we were clearly both just looking into the ether at this point. I defend again. She brings in her bishop. Very nice move, by the way. At this point, she's going to bring her bishop across to defend, now in front of the king on the king side. And so her weakness in front of the king, not having enough minor pieces, is now being um, fixed quite nicely with this bishop coming across. I still try and see if I can make something happen here, and then maybe I can play back. There is a version here, for instance, where she plays her rook across, and after this, I can maybe try sack for the knight, after which I can bring my bishop back in, after which I might be able to still make that draw happen. However, she just pushes my queen back immediately. I have to get out of the way. I can go here, but then she just pushes me again. There's no big difference, unfortunately. So I can't stay on the G file, so I get off it immediately. Um, and after that, she just pops in and blocks the diagonal again. I try to avoid a trade, and here comes the pawns. And now at this point, black is simply moving their pawns down to promote. My attack has stalled. I no longer have a clear way to make any progress. I'm looking at any kind of sacrifice that might be worthwhile, but honestly, there's really nothing there. Engine agrees, and even if I could think of some ways to make black make a mistake, things are looking quite bad. So I bring up my bishop, looking for a way to make some pressure. I'm trying to open up the file maybe. She's 2 moves away from queening with mate because my king can't go anywhere, and I can't defend because my rook is stuck. She first takes the pawn, and then I find a nice way to maybe just complicate things a little bit. Now I sack my bishop, and then I push to pin her pawn, her bishop, and then I can take it as well, but here comes the second queen. And if you look at the board here, you can see this is clearly done. This is resignable. It's been resignable for about 3-4 moves, but this is the first game of the tournament. I didn't play too well, and I'm trying to still just, use my head a bit. Maybe I can get a little bit more awake if I try and play a little longer. So as she checks and checks me around a little bit, I play a few more moves, but then we call it. At this point, there's obviously not been any reason to continue playing. I just went all the way down. If we open up the engine analysis quickly, you can see, or you can't see it unfortunately. At this point, if I go all the way back, I had the chance to take that f-pawn, which I had, against the engine's recommendation, cleared for myself by playing bishop e7. If only I could see that there was a nice sack over here that gives me the pawn move. This is a very unfortunate point because what I missed here was that I have pressure on both of these squares, and I open up this square to make the rook move, which means I come in with continuous initiative. Initiative again, initiative again, initiative again. And after this situation, after we get down here, it's a simple case of just safetying, putting my king in safety, and I can slowly start winning the rest of the game. This rook can't move because my queen's taking care of it. Her bishop and queen are currently not coordinated very well. It's a very good position for me, but this game was not to be. Alright, so that was round 1. So I went down 0-1 round 1 with white versus someone who was significantly lower rated than me. She was a very sweet girl. Her parents were also at the venue during the matches as well. It was very nice chatting to them a little bit. I'm quite impressed with families who can fly their kids overseas to go play some chess tournaments. And clearly she's not the worst, but she also has a lot to learn, as I do too. So that was round 1. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to sign off now, and then we're going to do round 2 a little bit later. Lots to come still. Really fun tournament. I was actually fairly happy with my performance by the end of it. So do come and check it out again. See ya.